धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद। श्रीमती कनिमोझी जी। जी
यहाँ रहे जो घर वाले परिवार वाले चाहते थे यही बना रहे थे।
हो गया माइक ही ऑन।
Sir, the previous speaker had very rosy glasses, and unfortunately, because of the tint, he's not able to see the truth. None of us deny that there has been improvement, but there's so much more to be done. We cannot blame everything on governments which were there, 10 years ago, and try to, push the entire blame on somebody else and not take responsibility for what today. So the infrastructure is always built by the government in all major economies, and today when we talk about the survey, economic survey, it says that if we invest 1 rupee in the railway, it generates 5 rupees in the economy. This is a clear advantage in investing public money in the railway infrastructure. Yet the union government has been neglecting the railway sector time and again. And the railway budget is primarily funded from 3 different sources: budgetary support by the union government, the extra budgetary resources, and its own internal resources. But the budgetary estimate for 22-23 is 2.45 lakh crores, and the budgetary estimate for the previous year was 2.15 lakh crores. The budgetary estimate seems to have been escalated, but the revised estimates, while the actual expenditure is nowhere even matches with the revised estimate. The financial performance of the railways during the past 3 consecutive years revealed that even the reduced allocation at the RE stage could not be fully utilized. I'd like to know why. Because there's so much to be done, and why has the funds not been fully utilized? And today we are talking about privatization, and they assume that everybody has accepted and happy with privatization. We have seen examples, even what happened to the Delhi Metro to the airport, when the private player just abandoned because it was not profit-making. They just abandoned, and then in the last minute, the railways had to take it over and complete. And even when it was completed, there's a lot of faults over there, problems with the buildings over there. So this is what the private sectors are capable of doing. So we have to understand that and not think that the best thing to happen to the railways is to give it to the private organizations and move away from it. Sir, all freight trains will be, you're saying by 2031, all the freight trains will be privatized, along with 30% of the 750 railway stations. So profit-making coaches are the AC coaches, and you want to privatize that. Only the loss-making second-class passenger trains will be left with the railways. And interestingly, the private player just has to invest in running the trains. The driver, the guards, and the tracks were all from the railways. The railways will also maintain the station, while the bookings will be done by the Indian Railways Catering Tourism Corporation or the IRCTC. This means that the Indian Railways will only run loss-making passenger trains, while all the profit-making trains will be operated by the private sector. As the profit is only from AC trains, the railway losses will increase by this. So why are we doing this? Why are you just taking over losses and giving away all the profit-making things?
Family silver.
Yeah, exactly. You're just giving away the family silver to the private players, and we've seen what the private players do. They do not take up the responsibility when they do not see profits. They just abandon the project and leave. And the freight share of railways. you have may set out plans to achieve at least around 8,400 metric tons of freight movement by 2030. But today, it is only 26% of the total freight movement of the country which the railways are handling. So there's so much of gap there, and you're not even handling 50% of the freight within the country. So there's a huge gap which you have to build across. And the jobs in the railways, as I think Suresh ji also, when he spoke here, mentioned about it. I'd like to add to that. There's so many vacancies. More than 2.65 lakh jobs are vacant in the Indian railways. You haven't been able to provide jobs for the youth in this country. At least in this sector, when there are vacancies, you can definitely fill that. And the language, South Indians don't get job opportunities these days in the railways.
Yes, shame.
It looks like there is a effort to keep us away from these jobs. And more than that, people who interact with the locals, with the passengers, have to know the language.
Yes.
We've actually had so many incidents where there could have been accidents because the person handling that does not understand the local language, does not speak the local language. You have to be sensitive to people's lives. You cannot play with people's lives. Sir, and accessibility of railway stations for the differently abled, it has so much more to ask for. You've been saying that you're more sensitive and it will be considered. But even the committee has recommended, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Social Justice and Empowerment recently assessed the implementation of the scheme for the people with disabilities. And they said there's so much lagging behind, and they have to provide better facilities. And before 2 years, before the COVID, there were coaches for differently able people. But now, in quoting COVID as a reason, these coaches have been stopped. But I think it is high time these coaches are restored and differently able people are allowed to use that. And even when there are special coaches, it is being used illegally by other people, and unfortunately the differently able people do not have access to these coaches also. So that has to be taken into consideration. And the union government has removed 4% job reservation for the differently abled in many of the jobs, IPS, Railway Protection Force, and all that. I mean, in many places, I really don't understand, what kind of social justice are we talking about if this is not happening. And railway electrification. You've said there will be 100% electrification by 2023, and that is next year. You've hardly reached 73%. So what plans do you have to achieve this 100% electrification? And in my constituency, Thoothukudi, I'm quoting that as an example, but there are so many, more than 1,368 railway underbridges in this country which has water logging. But every year we only, deal with it to pump out water, and every year there's water logging in all these places. We need a permanent solution. And in my constituency, for example, like when there are rains and flooding, water from the sea also comes in. And pumping out water is not an easy thing. So you need permanent solutions for issues like this. You can't just have flooded underbridges. And the railway tracks we've seen more than 60 elephants in the last 3 years have been killed in the tracks. These deaths could have been avoided had the forest and railway departments worked together communicated with each other and coordinated.
Very good point.
The CAG report has even said that the basic signage is not available, and there is nothing to alert the loco pilots that it is an elephant crossing area and they have to be slow, and they're not sensitized. There's no training for them. At this rate, if it goes on like this, I think in a decade or so, we will, not have elephants in this country. And railway safety, again, much was said about the railway safety. More than 13,000 train accidents across the country have killed nearly 12,000 railway passengers last year. And according to a recent report by the National Crime Records Bureau published in 2021, the latest statistics mean that on average, 32 people have lost their lives every day. This is a shame, and I think we have to think about the families of the lives which have been lost, and definitely something has to be done to ensure that there is safety, and we've seen so many accidents in railway crossings also. So I'm sure the government will, and I believe that you will take action so that this does not happen. And during COVID, many trains were stopped. Many trains were withdrawn, and many of the stops were also withdrawn. You've made it into express trains, and so it doesn't stop in as many stops that it did before COVID days. And even in my constituency, 3 trains, Thuthukudi, Coimbatore Link Express, Thuthukudi, Vanchi Maniachi train, and then Thuthukudi Chennai Link Express, Thuthukudi Tiruchendur Express, just to give you an example. All 3 have not gone back to what it was. The stops have been withdrawn, and so it is just not in one place. In many places there are, I think even in Kerala and so many, throughout India, there are, a lot of people depend on trains still. Even if you want to neglect it and give it away to the corporates, I think still people depend on the trains, and we have to revive these stations and stops. And the last thing I like to raise is that many people have noticed and even observed that there is a big difference between the coaches in the northern part of India and the southern part of India. Our coaches seem to be worn out and in very bad dilapidated conditions, and water leakage, and it looks very unsafe. We don't get new coaches at all.
I voted for you.
The content coaches are giving to
Yes. That is what many people are heard, that we get very bad condemned coaches over here. And the budget allocated for 22-23 for new lines to the southern railways is only 59 crores. 59 crores to the southern railways, and the northern railways is 13,200 crores.
What? Shame.
In the last 4 years, the centre has made 101 times higher budgetary allocation for new railway line projects in the northern railway and in the compared to the southern railway. The budgetary allocation for new railway lines in the southern railway in the last 4 years from 2019-20 has been nearly 308 crores only. But for the northern railway, it is 31,008 crores.
Shocking.
The Rameshwaram Dhanushkodi new line project has received an outlay of 59 crores. And that is, the new line project is 17.2 kilometers. And they've only given 59 crores. And the outlay for Madurai Bodinayakanur doubling project is only 125 crores. The gauge conversion project between Tiruchirappalli, Nagpur, Karaikal with the extension of Velankanni to Tiruthirai include new material modification of, but the new line is only allocated 121 crores. So there are many more in the list which I can read out, and I've also met the previous railway minister and the present railway minister. We've all given them a list of representation and requests from our constituencies, but hardly anything has been done. So I request the minister to look at the disparity and the differences between what is being given to the Northern Railway and how the South is being treated.
Shame, shame.
I think this is one country. I mean, you keep talking about India being one country. So I think railways, one nation. Railways also has to understand that it's one nation. And our allocations have to be increased, and
Don't neglect the South.
the trains which have been stopped and the stations which have been stopped have to be revived, because people are suffering a lot. And I think the coaches and the stations in South have to be improved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, very good, very good.
जो माननीय